Welcome to Group Editors Online. I'm Ilse Schoonraad. Joining us via Zoom is Ryk van Niekerk, the editor of moneyweb.co.za. Ryk, in your commentary piece on MoneyWeb titled Dancing on the Edge of a Cliff, you write that the scenes of ANC MPs dancing and singing after the budget was approved was a celebration of failure. But tell us, is this budget really so bad?
Yeah, it's the poorest budget or the worst budget since 1994. South Africa is in a dire financial position. Our fiscal position has deteriorated to such an extent that it is virtually at a point of no return. And this budget did not propose any austerity to improve the situation. It merely proposed to increase taxes and throw the ball to taxpayers to solve the fiscal crisis rather than take responsibility to it. So now there was a lot of politics involved to get this fiscal framework passed, which is the first of three pieces of legislation that needs to be passed before the budget is officially passed. And taxes rose by 30 billion rand, half a percentage point VAT hike, and then the non-adjustment of the tax scales is a significant tax increase. And then the victors in this vote sang and danced because they celebrated it. They should be ashamed of it. Yes, they beat a political opponent in the DA, but for South Africa, it was a sad day.
A leaked DA document contains sound fiscal suggestions. Why are the ANC leaders so adamant about not adopting their governing partners' suggestions?
The ANC did not act, I think, in the interest of South Africa, and the DA did not act in the interest of South Africa. The DA thought immediately, this is an opportunity for us to go and try and get concessions from the ANC for legislation that's got nothing to do with the budget. And then the ANC went outside of the government of national unity to get the support of Action SA and BOSA. So it was a political fight that could not be resolved. And that's why we are in this position. Yes, the DA made sound proposals, but within the context of this confrontation and the politics that were played, I think it was inevitable that there wouldn't be an agreement. Just imagine you have a bit of an issue with someone, say a supplier or a business, and you negotiate to try and come to a resolution, and then every single time after a negotiation process, the other party goes to social media and make political statements, which is not contributing to improving the situation. Now suddenly you are conflating the whole issue with politics, and that's the problem. The DA is most definitely not the victim here or the knight on a white horse. They overplayed their hand, and the ANC was not, I think, did not approach this with the right political mindset. They tried to beat the DA, and when they couldn't, they went outside of the GNU. Both parties are wrong, and I don't know what's going to happen in a reconstituted government of national unity.
You say that the DA was very clearly outmaneuvered, and Action SA and the PA, came and they supported the ANC with certain conditions, but now it seems as though those conditions, and it may have backfired on Action SA.
I think Action SA has been played like a fiddle. We will see a VAT hike on 1 May. It's practically impossible for that VAT hike to be paused or scrapped. The legislation needs to change for that VAT hike not to take place. The same with the adjustment of or non-adjustment of the tax scales. We are on 9 April today. We've got 21 days to the end of the month. That's 3 weeks. There's a parliamentary recess at the moment. So the ANC got a concession, or the support of Action SA. Action SA made a big spiel of, listen, we only support you if there is no VAT hike. I think it's highly, highly unlikely that it will happen due to the nature of what should and needs to happen for that VAT hike to be scrapped. And let's see what Action SA does and BOSA following 1 May when that VAT hike is implemented.
Ryk, let's talk about the US tariffs. The sky-high 30% tariff, in other words, taxes, imposed by Trump on many South African exports to the USA. How will that influence the average South African?
Yeah, it's a complicated situation. First of all, if we just look at the impact on the economy, and I'll get to the normal consumer in a minute, it's not going to have that significant impact on our economy. The majority of products we export to the US is minerals, commodities, gold, platinum group metals, also steel and steel products, chrome, and they are exempt from these tariffs. So they are not affected at all. Now, the biggest sector that will be influenced would be the manufacturing sector, and specifically the automotive sector. It is the biggest manufacturing sector within South Africa, and there are a lot of exports, maybe not that much exports to the US. I think it's around 6 or 7% of total vehicle exports from South Africa goes to the US, and there will be a 25% tariff, and that will definitely be implemented. And the other sector that will be affected would be the agricultural sector, especially citrus, macadamia nuts, and we will have to see what that impact is. But again, it's around 6% of total agricultural exports go to the US, and hopefully those producers can find alternative markets. So those sectors will be affected. Now, as a consequence, consumers won't be really, they won't feel the direct impact of these tariffs. The effects are limited to those sectors. But what will happen is we will see international economic activity reduce, and it can reduce and decline quite significantly if this trade war is not, checked in some shape or form, if we don't see some concessions from Donald Trump and the US. And a worse or a poor performing international global economy will have an impact on the South African economy. We will also see a decline in economic activity and lower growth rates. And that, of course, will affect every single one of us. And perhaps, it will lead to higher interest rates if the tariffs become inflationary. And of course, higher interest rates are bad for most people with debt. But the general decline in economic activity will be a big concern. We need growth to create jobs. We have got a 40% unemployment rate, and the current scenario is not positive.
So what do you hope for? That all the countries in the world, including South Africa, negotiates with Trump, say to him, please, let's talk, how do we do this?
Well, that's a good question. Well, sanity needs to prevail. Remember, this is not good for the USA, or it's not all good for the USA. What Donald Trump wants to achieve is he wants to get or return foreign production capacity to the US. He wants to ensure that the US manufactures what it uses. Now, it will include a factory in China or Vietnam or Cambodia, which produces clothing by paying people $50 a month and producing really good quality clothing. And they have hundreds and thousands of these factories. Now he wants to replicate that in the US. How many US residents will receive or accept $50 a month, and I don't know what the amount is, but it's
Yeah.
nominal, to manufacture their own clothes. There's a 2%, I don't think it's a 2%, but a very low unemployment rate, around 4.5% in the US. There is just no jobs. And remedial labor is being deported from the US under Trump's immigration policies. So just the practicality of that's not going to work. Now, take our wine exports to the US, for example. There would be a whole economy in the US to accept our wine, to import it, to distribute it to retailers, and for retailers to sell it. So there is a lot of businesses in the US dependent on our wine exports to the US. And the same applies to all vehicles being imported to the exported to the US, clothing, any manufactured good. So you will now marginalize and severely limit the ability of a significant part of the US economy to function properly. And this happened overnight. So there will be a pushback, an aggressive pushback from American business against these tariffs. It's not all positive for the USA. And the question we need to ask each other, or Trump needs to ask himself, is this a zero-sum game? Will his actions result in a better outcome for the USA? And I think no.
Could it be just a tactic?
It would be beneficial if he puts the right facts on the table. You can't just, fire out of, fire shots from the hip without relevant facts. If you don't have accurate facts, then, what is how would you negotiate on that? And I don't know what the outcome is. And we need some rationality to return and say, listen, you want to protect the US economy. Let's just see exactly what the issues are. But to go and bark at the rest of the world, we will make America wealthy again. I think it's definitely not the right way to do it. And if you look at the stock markets in the US and around the world, it's most definitely not making America wealthy again. It's actually has caused a lot of damage. And I saw a tweet from somebody this morning stating that the US trade deficit is around $1 trillion, but more than 10 trillion was wiped off the US stock markets within a week. That also doesn't make sense.
No. Well, it boggles the mind because nobody would do that on purpose. I mean, what could be the motive behind this, Self-gain? Is individuals maybe getting richer because of this? Because did he harm his own country on purpose? Instead of making it great again, let's make it as weak as possible.
Well, that's the perception from, I think, a large part of the world. It's not his perception. I don't know. There will be beneficiaries. There will be people who, win from this. The local vehicle manufacturing industry in the US will benefit, but it will make vehicles more expensive in the US, and consumers will not benefit, or they will be placed in a worse position. So I don't know. Is there something sinister? Is it somebody whose ego is bigger than his country? Is it a perspective just to try and get back at democratic policies in the US? I don't know. Just US aid, for example. US aid was, the operations were significantly limited, and many projects, feeding projects, has been cancelled. Now, USAID bought or procured more than between $4 and $5 billion worth of grain from farmers in the US. Now, obviously, that will disappear overnight. What the impact will be, I don't know, is clear yet, but it's definitely not a positive for agriculture in the US. And the many other industries will be affected in the same way. But remember, Donald Trump is a convicted criminal. He has been convicted on fraud. He slept with porn stars. Then he used campaign money to hush up Stormy Daniels. He was found guilty of fraud there. The only reason why he's not in jail is because he became the president. So you need to take into perspective the integrity of the man, which I believe is non-existent. And yes, he's the most powerful man in the world, and it's going to take immense skill to negotiate with a man like that. And I don't know what's going to happen in the next few months, but hopefully some sanity returns.
Ryk van Niekerk, thank you very, very much for your time. Much appreciated.
Thank you.